The storm on Velyra wasn't a storm. It was a living thing. Winds screamed like tortured souls across the white horizon, turning the frozen plains into a blinding ocean of ice and death. Lieutenant Darius Holt, a human explorer built like a tank, pushed forward through the chaos, his heavy boots sinking into the knee-deep snow. The temperature had fallen far below the safety limits of his environmental suit, and the warning lights on his visor were flashing red. His breath fogged the inside of the helmet as he spoke to his companion. "Just a bit more, Luna. Come on, girl." The dog beside him, a massive white-furred hound bred for high-gravity worlds, gave a low, weary bark. Her fur was rimed with frost, but her eyes stayed on him with loyalty only a human pet could hold. Every step she took was slower than the last. Darius could hear the faint crackle of failing heat coils inside his suit. He'd been stranded here since his small scout ship had gone down in a magnetic storm 3 days ago. The distress beacon was active, but no one was coming soon. Not in this weather. He adjusted his pack, the wind slamming against his massive frame. At 6'6" and 270 pounds of hardened muscle, Darius had never thought himself weak. But here, on this ice world, light years from help, he felt small. For the first time in years, he was afraid. Then he saw it, a faint glow, barely visible through the whiteout. Artificial light, not the cold shimmer of ice, but the steady pulse of technology. Hope slammed into him like a physical force. "You see that, Luna?" he shouted, his voice muffled by the storm. "We're not dying today." He pushed forward, every muscle screaming, until the glow grew into shape, a structure half buried in snow. Its design was strange. Smooth, curved walls intersected by geometric angles, glowing faintly with blue energy veins. Alien, without a doubt. As he approached, the storm thickened, the wind howling louder, as if warning him away. Darius ignored it and slammed his gloved hand against what looked like a door panel. His fist made a dull metallic thud. For a long moment, there was nothing but the shriek of the wind. Then, hiss! The door slid open, and a wave of warm air hit him like salvation. Darius squinted as a figure appeared in the entrance. She wasn't human. Her skin glowed with a soft cyan light, her hair silver white like moonlight spilling over her shoulders. Her eyes shimmered like liquid metal, calm, intelligent, curious. She wore a short jacket and tall boots, far too light for the deadly cold outside, yet she stood as if the weather meant nothing to her. "It'll be a tight fit," she said in a melodic tone, "but come in." Her calmness threw him off more than her appearance. It was as if humans knocking on her door in the middle of a death storm was an everyday event. Darius ducked through the doorway, Luna trotting close behind. The warmth hit his frozen body so fast he almost groaned. Inside, the space was compact, a single chamber lined with softly humming alien machinery. A small kitchen area merged with what looked like a workstation. Everything pulsed faintly with blue light. "Thank you," Darius managed through chattering teeth. We would have frozen out there." "Yes," she replied simply, pressing a control on the wall that sealed the door. "You would have." He studied her as she moved with graceful efficiency, adjusting something on a console that made the air even warmer. "I am Lyra, researcher of the Velyran outpost." "Darius Holt," he said, removing his helmet. Steam rose as the cold evaporated from his suit. "And this is Luna." The dog shook herself, scattering bits of ice across the sleek floor. Lyra smiled faintly and knelt, letting the dog sniff her glowing hand. Luna gave a small lick of approval. "Your companion is wise," Lyra said softly. "You may remove your outer gear. There are thermal blankets by the wall." As Darius peeled off the frozen layers, he caught her watching him. Her gaze wasn't shy, more like curiosity mixed with admiration. "Humans," she murmured. "So much muscle. So much heat." Darius flushed slightly, unsure if she was studying or flirting. "Yeah, we're not great at handling the cold." "You don't seem surprised to see me," he said, wrapping a blanket around his shoulders. "Most aliens don't exactly expect humans to knock during a blizzard." Lyra turned from her console, her silver eyes meeting his. Who said I was surprised? He frowned. You knew I was coming? Her lips curved faintly. Not exactly new. Anticipated. She handed him a cup of steaming liquid. Drink. It will help your core temperature. The drink was sweet, with a sharp herbal taste that filled him with warmth from the inside out. As he sipped, he couldn't help but notice something strange about her tone, her presence. It wasn't just kindness. There was purpose behind her calm, like she'd been waiting for him. And outside, the storm raged on, as if trying to keep him from discovering why. Warmth filled the small alien outpost, but Darius Holt couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The walls hummed with a faint rhythm, like a living heartbeat beneath the metal. Strange, shifting lights rippled through the smooth surfaces, as if the structure itself was breathing. Luna had stopped shivering, now resting near a glowing heater. Yet her eyes followed every movement of their host. Lyra moved like someone who had spent too long alone, precise, silent, deliberate. Her long silver hair caught the soft blue light, giving her an almost ethereal glow. She poured another cup of that strange, sweet liquid and sat across from him at a rounded metallic table. You're lucky to be alive, she said, her voice calm and measured. Velyra's storms are not kind to visitors. I noticed, Darius replied dryly. His suit was still steaming where the ice had melted off. My ship's NAV system glitched during descent. I didn't plan on sightseeing. Her eyes flicked toward the window. No one comes here by accident. That statement made his skin prickle. You saying someone brought me down? Lyra didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached to the wall and tapped a control. A soft tone filled the air, and a holographic display shimmered into existence. Swirling white clouds, Velyra's storm systems, rotated above the glowing projection of the planet. This world isn't just cold, she explained. It's alive. The storms are part of a natural electromagnetic cycle. But this one, she gestured to the massive white vortex covering half the planet, isn't natural. It's focused. Focused. Darius leaned closer. You mean controlled? Her eyes met his again, silver and deep. Yes, and I was the one who did it. He froze. You caused the storm? She nodded, unflinching. I altered the atmospheric field. I needed to bring your ship down. For a second, Darius just stared. His mind tried to process her words, but the calmness in her tone made them worse. You what? You nearly killed me and my dog for what science? Lyra tilted her head, her expression unreadable. You wouldn't have come otherwise. No human would willingly travel this far in a quarantined space. But I needed a human. Specifically you. He felt anger rise in his chest. You needed me? You don't even know who I am. I know more than you think, she said quietly. Darius Holt, ex-soldier, survey corps pilot, human born under gravity, twice Earth standard, body adapted for endurance and impact, a survivor in every sense of the word. He blinked. You've been tracking me. For a long time, she admitted. Your species is what mine lacks, resilience. The ability to adapt, to fight, to survive even when the odds are hopeless. My people we lost it a long time ago. Something in her voice changed. It wasn't arrogance, it was sorrow. She turned off the hologram and stood, moving closer. My world is dying, Darius. Velyra's storms grow worse every cycle. Our bodies weaken. Our genes fail us. The Alliance sealed us off decades ago, calling us an evolutionary dead end. Her silver eyes hardened. But I refuse to let us die quietly. Darius crossed his arms. So, you thought kidnapping a human was the answer? Her tone stayed even, but her words cut deep. Not kidnapping. Saving. You humans have something inside your DNA, what we call the resilience sequence. It's what allows you to survive radiation, hunger, cold, war, even your own destruction. I studied hundreds of recorded samples. But theory isn't enough. I needed the real thing. He took a slow breath. You could have just asked. Her lips curved slightly, half smile, half regret. Would you have come if I had? He didn't answer. She was right. The truth stung more than he wanted to admit. The silence stretched, heavy and electric. The hum of alien machines filled the room. Outside, the blizzard screamed like a warning. Finally, Darius said, "So what happens now? You have your human. What's your plan?" Lyra's gaze softened. "To fix what's broken. But for that, I'll need your help. And your trust." He let out a rough laugh. "Trust? After you crash my ship? You'll understand soon," she said, stepping closer. Her skin glowed faintly, the light reflecting in his eyes. "There are things moving in this storm, things far worse than me. You were never the only one I was waiting for." Before he could respond, Luna let out a low growl. The lights flickered. A deep rumble shook the outpost, like something massive moving beneath the snow. Lyra turned toward the window, her voice suddenly sharp. "They found us." Darius reached for his weapon. "Ooh!" Her silver eyes gleamed in the dim blue light. "Predators." The warmth in her room seemed to vanish as the storm outside screamed louder. And for the first time since landing, Darius realized Velyra wasn't just cold. It was hunting them. The sound came first, low, rumbling, and wrong. It wasn't thunder. It was alive. The floor trembled under Darius's boots, as if something vast was moving beneath the frozen crust of Lyra. Luna's growl deepened, her fur bristling, every instinct screaming danger. Darius's pulse quickened. He had survived alien jungles, acid rain worlds, and vacuum exposure once, but this was different. This wasn't just nature. It was something intelligent, something that hunted. Lyra moved quickly to a control panel and slammed her palm against a glowing sigil. Instantly, the walls shimmered with layered shields of transparent energy. "Thermal barriers active," she said sharply. "It'll mask our heat signatures for a short while." Darius adjusted the grip on his sidearm. "What are we dealing with?" Her eyes flicked toward the window, silver light cutting through the gloom. "Vorax." He frowned. "Never heard of them." "You wouldn't have." The Alliance scrubbed their records after classifying this planet as restricted research territory. They call them predators. I call them parasites. She turned to face him, her expression grim. They feed on life force, heat, energy, movement. The storm hides them, but it's also what brings them close. He stepped nearer to the window, squinting through the blur of snow. At first, he saw nothing, just endless white. Then, shapes began to emerge. Tall, thin shadows moving low and fast, circling. Their outlines were wrong, jagged, fluid, like smoke trapped in armor. Their movements weren't random. They were stalking. Luna growled louder, tail rigid. "How many?" Darius asked quietly. "4, maybe 5. But if one's here, more will come. They never hunt alone." He scanned her equipment. "Any defenses other than the shield?" "Thermal disruptors," she replied, pulling open a wall panel to reveal 2 sleek, curved pistols. She tossed one to him. "It scrambles their ability to detect heat. Doesn't kill them, but buys time." Darius caught the weapon, feeling its unusual weight. It hummed faintly, like it was alive. "You built these?" "I've had years to prepare," she said simply. He looked at her, really looked at her, this alien woman who had trapped him here, who spoke like a scientist and moved like a soldier. There was fear behind her calm, but not cowardice. It was the fear of someone who had survived too many nights like this. "Why haven't you left?" he asked. Lyra's eyes didn't move from the window. "Because I can't. The storms aren't just weather. They're part of Lyra's defense. My people tried to terraform this world generations ago. The planet fought back. It creates storms, magnetic pulses, and creatures like the Vorax to protect itself." She hesitated, and now it's winning. Darius checked his weapon's power gauge. "Then maybe it's time someone fought back." The lights flickered again. A deep scraping sound echoed through the wall, metal grinding against something strong. The energy field flared as if struck. A second later, something slammed against the outer hull, hard enough to rattle the entire structure. "They found us," Lyra whispered. Darius moved to the entryway, weapon ready. "Can they break through?" "Eventually. They can melt through metal by concentrating heat they drain from the storm itself. They're patient hunters." He gave a grim smile. "Then let's make them regret being patient." Lyra turned to him, confusion flickering across her face. "You sound almost eager." He glanced at her. "Where I come from, we don't run from monsters. We study them. Then we make sure they never get up again. Before she could respond, the hull shuddered again. A long, segmented limb punched through the outer wall, molten edges hissing. A clawed appendage, black and glistening, twisted through the breach. Luna barked furiously. Darius fired. The thermal disruptor spat a beam of white energy, striking the creature's limb. The alien metal sizzled, and the arm recoiled with a guttural screech that made the floor vibrate. Got its attention, he muttered. Lyra moved beside him, her own weapon ready. Don't get cocky, human. Too late. The outpost shook again, multiple impacts now. The Vorax were attacking from all sides. Through the window, Darius saw one crawl up the dome wall, its body like liquid obsidian, eyes burning red through the snow. Lyra pressed a command, and the outer lights blazed bright. The sudden illumination sent the creatures scattering momentarily, their thin limbs twisting violently in pain. They hate light, she said. Then let's blind them. Darius grabbed a toolkit from his crash bag and yanked out a flare pack. With quick precision, he twisted two wires together and overcharged the power cell. Old Earth trick. When you can't kill it, flash it. He hurled the flare toward the window. A searing burst of light exploded outside, turning night into blue daylight. The Vorax shrieked, retreating from the light. Their forms melted into the blizzard once more. For a long moment, there was silence except for the dying hiss of snow. Darius exhaled. Lyra looked at him with a strange expression, half disbelief, half admiration. You humans really don't hesitate, do you? He holstered the weapon. We don't have the luxury to. Survive first, think later. Her gaze lingered on him, her silver eyes glowing brighter. That's the difference, she said softly. When my people face death, we hide. When humans face death, you make it bleed. Outside, something howled again, distant, furious, and multiplied. The brief calm was over. Lyra checked her sensors. They're regrouping. The next wave will be worse. Darius cracked his neck and grinned. Good. I was started to warm up. And somewhere deep beneath the ice, the planet itself seemed to rumble in answer, as if Velyra was waking up to watch the fight that was about to begin. The storm outside had quieted, but that was the worst sign of all. Silence meant the Vorax were thinking. Darius Holt knew the pattern. Predators got quiet before they struck. The kind of quiet that made the air itself feel like a trap. Inside the outpost, blue lights flickered across the control panels, reflecting off Lyra's silver eyes as she scanned multiple energy readings. The shield barrier around the station shimmered faintly, showing thin fractures at the edges. It wouldn't hold much longer. They're adapting, she said under her breath. The light trick won't work twice. They learn. Then we'll stop playing defense, Darius replied, rolling up the sleeves of his thermal suit. His arms were scarred and heavy with muscle, a human frame built from years of war and gravity training. If they learn fast, we'll hit faster. Lyra watched him move across the room, pulling apart his emergency kit and scattering components over her workstation. Power cells, flare casings, fusion coils, and a small pulse battery, all laid out like pieces of a puzzle. What are you doing? She asked. Turning your research base into a war room. She raised an eyebrow, almost amused despite the situation. Do all humans think like soldiers? Only the ones who survive. He began wiring 2 flare cores to a power cell. You said these creatures hunt by heat, right? They track anything over 50 degrees Kelvin difference. Yes. Their primary sense is thermoreceptive. Good, he said, grinning. Then we'll give them what they want. Lyra tilted her head. You're building decoys. Smart girl. He connected the wires, creating a small unit that started to glow faintly. Back on Earth, we used similar tactics against night predators. When you can't hide, you confuse. Give them too many targets to chase. Lyra stepped closer, studying his hands. His movements were fast, confident, almost instinctual. You do this so easily, as if chaos is your native language. It is, Darius said simply. Humans don't conquer nature. We argue with it until it gives up. She smiled faintly, the first genuine expression he'd seen from her since they met. Maybe that's why I brought you here. He paused, meeting her gaze. You still haven't told me why me specifically. Because your species isn't afraid to fight back, she said softly. And because the Vorax have never faced a human before. A low rumble interrupted them, the kind that vibrated through the bones. The shield flickered again. Frost formed along the walls, crackling as the outer temperature plummeted even further. The Vorax were drawing power from the storm, feeding off the cold itself. Lyra's expression darkened. They're draining the field. We have less than an hour before they breach. Darius snapped the final seal on the decoy. The device emitted a steady hum. Then let's make it count. He placed the glowing units across the room. Each one radiated a human-like heat signature. When activated, they'd appear as living targets to the predators. We'll set these around the perimeter, he said. Once the Vorax strike, they'll chase the fakes while we hit them from behind. Lyra nodded slowly. It could work if we survive the first contact. Darius glanced toward Luna, who was lying alert near the door, tail twitching. We've been through worse. Worse than this? Lyra asked, her tone disbelieving. Try surviving a hull breach on a drifting ship, he said, tightening his gloves. You learn to stop thinking about impossible. She looked at him then, really looked at the human standing in her station, face scarred by storms and light, eyes calm but burning with something her people had long forgotten. Defiance. Your species, she murmured. You treat danger like it's a challenge, not a death sentence. Darius smirked. Because we've been the underdogs for too long. Makes you creative. For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of machines filled the silence between them. Outside, the storm pulsed with flashes of light, shadows moving against the snow. The Vorax were circling closer. Lyra turned away to arm her disruptor pistol. I'll cover the northern approach. Negative, Darius said quickly. We stick together. These things separate prey before they strike. You move alone, you die alone. She hesitated, then nodded. Understood. He tossed her a modified flashlight. I boosted its output. Aim for their thorax cluster. It'll blind them. Her lips quirked upward. You make weapons out of scraps and luck. Typical human ingenuity. Hey, luck's just math with better timing. The barrier field pulsed violently, sending a ripple through the floor. Warning lights flashed red across the control panels. The storm outside howled like something ancient had just awoken. Lyra's expression turned grim. They're here. Darius raised his rifle, jaw set. Then let's welcome them properly. The next instant, a shriek tore through the frozen night, high-pitched and feral. The wall shook. Luna barked once, loud and sharp, ready. Lyra activated the internal defenses, sending energy pulses rippling through the floor. They're testing for weak points. Then let's give them one, Darius said, moving toward the outer hatch. Lyra's eyes widened. You're going out there? He glanced back at her with a half-smile. You want a resilience? Watch and learn. Before she could stop him, he hit the hatch control. The door slid open, and the storm roared in, icy wind tearing through the warmth. Darius stepped out into the chaos, armor frosting instantly, weapon in hand. Lyra stared after him, heart pounding in a way she didn't understand. The sensors flared red as multiple heat signatures converged on the human's position. And still, through the blinding storm, she saw him standing tall, one man against an alien blizzard, daring the monsters to come closer. Somewhere deep inside her, something awakened. Not fear, something older, something her species had forgotten how to feel. Hope. The blizzard hit Darius like a wall of knives. The wind screamed around him, tearing at his suit and biting into every seam, but he stood his ground, one lone figure against the endless white. The moment he stepped outside, the sensors in his visor flared red. Multiple life forms surrounding him, moving fast. Lyra, he said into the comm, I've got movement on all sides. 6 of them. Her voice came through the static, calm but strained. Their heat signatures are converging. You need to move now. Negative, he replied, eyes narrowing. They're hunting by temperature. I want them to see me. He crouched low and planted one of his decoy devices into the snow. It began to hum, glowing faintly as it emitted a human-like heat pattern. A second, then a third. Soon the snowfield was dotted with false signatures, all flickering like beating hearts. From the shadows, the first Vorak appeared. It was huge, taller than 2 men, thin and angular, its body a lattice of obsidian armor. It crawled low to the ground, limbs jointed backward like a spider's, eyes glowing with dull crimson heat. The thing moved in silence, graceful and deliberate, its body absorbing the stormlight until it almost vanished. Luna growled beside him, her fur bristling, teeth bared. Darius steadied his weapon. "Easy, girl." He fired once. The pulse beam struck the creature square in its chest, sending up a burst of steam as the heat reacted with its frozen hide. The Vorak staggered back, emitting a sound like metal scraping glass. Then 3 more shapes emerged from the blizzard. "Multiple targets closing," he shouted. Inside the outpost, Lyra's hands flew across the controls. "Deploying signal interference now," she said. Energy pulses rippled outward, momentarily scattering the predator's sensory readings. "They're blind for 15 seconds. Use it." "Copy that." Darius sprinted forward through the snow, boots crunching against the ice. He threw another decoy to the left and rolled behind an outcropping of frozen rock. One of the Voraks lunged toward the decoy's heat, missing him entirely. The others hesitated, confused by the sudden field of false prey. "That's right," he thought grimly. "Chase the ghosts." He aimed again, switching the disruptor to a higher charge. The beam flared white, slamming into the lead creature's thorax. Its armor cracked, exposing pale, glowing tissue beneath. The creature shrieked, a horrible, vibrating sound that shook the snow loose from the cliffs above. "Lyra, they bleed light," he said. "Then they can die," she replied. The momentary victory was short-lived. A Vorak erupted from beneath the snow, bursting upward in a spray of ice. Darius barely dodged as its claws sliced across his shoulder, tearing through his outer armor. He hit the ground hard, pain burning through his arm. Luna leapt without hesitation, sinking her teeth into the creature's limb. The Vorak screamed, its other arm swiping violently. Luna was thrown aside, but landed on her feet, snarling, refusing to back down. "Good girl," Darius shouted, firing again. This time he aimed directly for the creature's head. The blast hit clean, and the Vorak collapsed, black steam pouring from the wound. Inside, Lyra watched the readings in awe. His adrenaline levels were spiking, but not in a way she'd ever seen before. Her sensors picked up an odd resonance between his vitals and her own. The bond. It was reacting to the stress. Through the link, she felt his pulse, furious, determined, alive. And for the first time in her life, she felt courage. Not the absence of fear, but the power to stand in spite of it. She grabbed her weapon and ran to the hatch. "Lyra, stay inside," Darius barked. "Not a chance," she replied. "If your kind can fight for survival, so can mine." The hatch slid open, and Lyra stepped into the blizzard. The cold didn't bite her the way it did him. Her azure skin shimmered, absorbing and redirecting the temperature. She raised her disruptor and fired. A beam of pure energy cut through the snow, striking a Vorak squarely in the thorax. The creature convulsed, screeching in pain. Darius blinked through the storm, surprised. Not bad for a scientist. She smirked, her hair whipping in the wind. Adaptation, remember? Another Vorak lunged from the right. Lyra turned too slow, but Darius was already there. He tackled her out of the way, rolling with her into the snow as the creature's claw tore through the air where she'd been. He fired point blank into its chest. The impact lit up the storm in a burst of white flame. The alien's body convulsed, then fell still, smoke rising from its wounds. They both lay there for a moment, breathing hard, the storm swirling around them. Lyra's silver eyes locked onto his. "You could have died." He gave a half-smile. Humans have a bad habit of doing the stupid thing that works. Her laugh was short, almost disbelieving. I finally understand why your kind scares the Alliance." He rose to his feet, helping her up. The bond between them pulsed faintly, warmth spreading through his chest. The air around her shimmered with energy, his energy reflected back through the strange link they shared. "Careful," he said softly. "You're starting to feel human. Maybe that's not such a bad thing." Before either could say more, the ground beneath them rumbled again. Far off in the storm, something enormous moved, heavier, slower, older. The snow rippled outward in waves. Lyra's face drained of color. "That's not a pack. That's their matriarch." Darius tightened his grip on his weapon, jaw set. "Then let's finish this before Mama gets here." The wind screamed again, and this time it wasn't just weather. It was the sound of something monstrous answering his challenge. The sky split open with a roar that felt alive. The blizzard twisted upward into a spiraling vortex, lightning flaring within the clouds like veins of burning ice. The storm wasn't just weather anymore. It was answering to something. Summoned. Controlled. Lyra froze, her eyes wide. "She's coming." Darius turned toward the horizon. Through the swirling snow, a vast silhouette emerged, towering, monstrous, and utterly alien. The Vorak matriarch. Her body shimmered with a metallic sheen, black and violet scales catching the light of the storm. 6 massive limbs carried her easily across the ice, each step shaking the ground. Where she walked, frost cracked and melted from the energy radiating off her. "She's drawing from the planet's core," Lyra whispered, "feeding on Velyra itself." "Then she's overcharging," Darius muttered. "And overcharging means unstable. You plan to fight that?" Lyra stared at him in disbelief. He checked the power cell on his rifle. "No, I plan to make her explode." The storm howled louder, carrying the matriarch's shriek across the plains. Her smaller kin crawled behind her like a living tide. Darius could feel the vibration in his chest, an ancient sound of hunger and hatred. He glanced at Lyra. "We'll need to draw her close. That shield generator of yours, can it reverse its polarity?" Her eyes flicked to him, shocked. "You mean turn it from a barrier into a magnetic amplifier?" "Exactly. Feed it too much power and it'll go critical. That would vaporize everything within 200 meters. Then we'll have to move fast." Lyra hesitated. "Darius, if we trigger it, we won't make it out in time." He smiled faintly. "I've had worse odds." She grabbed his arm, fingers trembling. "You don't have to die for us." He looked at her, steady and calm. "That's the difference between your people and mine. We die so others don't have to." For a heartbeat, the storm fell silent, as if listening. Then the matriarch screamed, and the wind returned with fury. Darius moved first, sprinting toward the outpost. The cold tore at his lungs, but adrenaline drowned the pain. Lyra followed close, her energy shield flickering around them both. Luna bounded beside them, barking defiantly at the incoming darkness. Inside the station, alarms blared. Systems overloaded as Lyra rerouted every remaining power cell into the central generator. Sparks burst from the panels, casting blue light over their faces. "She's almost within range," Lyra shouted over the noise. "When the field inverts, it'll create a magnetic implosion. We'll have less than 30 seconds to escape." "Then I'll keep her busy for 31, Darius replied. Before she could argue, he was gone, out into the storm again. The matriarch loomed like a moving mountain, her carapace splitting open to reveal glowing fissures of raw energy. Darius fired, pulse after pulse slamming into her chest. The blast barely scorched her armor, but they got her attention. The creature turned, shrieking, focusing all 6 crimson eyes on the lone human standing before her. "Come on then," he muttered. "You want a heat? You got it." She charged. The ground quaked as tons of alien flesh thundered forward. Darius sprinted backward, firing as he moved. The storm bent around her body, wind twisting violently. Lightning forked across the ice. Inside, Lyra's hands flew over the console. Generator at 80%. "Do it," he yelled in the comm. "Now, Lyra." "Not yet. It's not stable." "Neither am I." He dove behind a snow ridge as the matriarch's claws slashed the ground, carving trenches in the ice. Her scream was deafening shaking his bones. He rolled to his feet, grabbed a spare power cell, and hurled it into one of the fissures in her chest. The impact caused a burst of blue flame. The creature staggered, roaring in rage. "Generator at 100%, Lyra shouted. "Reversing polarity." The world lit up. A pulse of white energy burst outward from the outpost, expanding in a perfect sphere. The air rippled. Snow vaporized. The matriarch froze mid-charge, her massive body trembling as the magnetic field began to collapse inward. Her armor cracked, glowing brighter and brighter until it split open completely. "Darius!" Lyra cried through the comms. "Get out of there!" He looked back once, the outpost glowing like a miniature sun, and smiled. "Not yet. I need to make sure it takes." He sprinted toward the creature, dodging debris and shards of molten ice. The magnetic pressure grew, pulling everything inward. The matriarch shrieked, her claws scraping at the ground as she was dragged toward the collapsing field. Darius launched himself forward, firing one last pulse directly into her exposed core. The beam struck true, and everything went white. The explosion was silent. Light devoured sound, air, and matter all at once. Then darkness. When Lyra opened her eyes, the storm was gone. The air was eerily still. The outpost had partially collapsed, its walls buried under glassed ice. She stumbled outside, coughing, her skin dimming as exhaustion took hold. And there, half buried in the snow, stood a single figure, armor scorched, smoke rising from his suit. Darius. He was alive. Barely. Lyra ran to him, kneeling beside his motionless body. She pressed her glowing hand against his chest, felt the faint rhythm of a human heartbeat. Relief washed over her like sunlight. As she looked around, the world was silent. The Vorax were gone. The storm had died with their queen. The sky above was clear for the first time in years. Darius stirred, opening one eye with a weak grin. "Told you, humans don't stay down." Lyra laughed, tears mixing with the melting frost on her face. "You insane, stubborn creature." He chuckled softly. "You're welcome." And then the snow began to fall again, gentle this time, quiet, as if Velyra itself was breathing easier. The storm had passed, but silence was not peace. It was the kind of silence that comes after something ancient has died. The ice fields of Velyra lay still, glittering under a pale sun that hadn't been seen in decades. The sky was no longer a swirling monster of white and thunder. It was clear, vast, and endless. Lyra stood outside the wreckage of her outpost, her blue skin glowing faintly against the snow. The wind brushed her silver hair across her face as she stared at the horizon. No movement, no shapes in the distance, no sound but the whisper of soft wind. The Vorax were gone, extinct. Behind her, the remains of the generator crackled weakly. The blast had vaporized nearly everything within the radius. Only fragments of metal and glass were left half melted into the ground. The outpost interior had collapsed inward like a broken heart. And yet, somehow, it had spared them. A groan came from nearby. "Remind me to never let you handle the power systems again," Darius muttered, his voice hoarse. Lyra turned immediately. He was sitting half-buried under a layer of frost, helmet cracked, armor scorched black. Steam rose from his body as the bond between them pulsed faintly, keeping him alive. She ran to him, kneeling in the snow. "Don't move," she said, her voice trembling. "You're burned." He smiled weakly. "You should see the other guy." Lyra let out a shaky laugh, her hands hovering over him as her skin glowed brighter. The faint light from her palms flowed into his body, merging with the bond. Wounds that should have taken weeks to heal began knitting before her eyes. Darius blinked slowly. "You're healing me?" "Not just me," she said softly. "It's us. The bond. It's merging our biologies." He looked down at his hands. The frost no longer stung. His skin felt different, stronger, warmer. He could feel her heartbeat echoing faintly in his chest, out of rhythm with his own, but close enough to sync. "That's new," he said, his tone a mix of awe and unease. Lyra smiled faintly. The ritual worked better than I expected. You carry my traits now. Heat tolerance. Enhanced cell repair. And you? He asked. Her eyes glowed, faintly silver. I can feel emotion. The raw kind your people run on. Anger, hope, courage. It's loud, chaotic, but beautiful. He chuckled quietly. Welcome to being human. It's messy, but it's worth it. They sat there for a while in silence, the sky reflecting off the ice like a second ocean. Luna trotted up beside them, tail wagging weakly, then sat close, pressing her warm body against Darius's arm. Lyra reached out and gently ran her fingers through the dog's fur. Your kind creates loyalty even in other species, she said quietly. That's your greatest power. Not strength, not fire, but connection. Darius looked at her, meeting her silver eyes. Then maybe that's what your people need. Not just genes, connection. For the first time, Lyra smiled with something like peace. Maybe that's why fate brought you here. A sharp beep interrupted the quiet. The comms unit on Darius's wrist flickered weakly to life. A faint holographic projection appeared, a rotating emblem of the Galactic Alliance. Lyra's expression hardened. They found us. The transmission crackled. Lieutenant Holt, you are ordered to surrender any foreign biological samples and await extraction. Do not engage local species. Repeat, stand by for retrieval. Darius exchanged a look with her. They think this was just a crash mission. Extraction, Lyra said bitterly. That means containment. They'll take me, dissect me, study the bond. He glanced at the signal, then at her. The snow reflected the light of the projection across her face, painting her skin in shades of blue and gold. If they try, he said quietly, they'll have to go through me first. Lyra's breath caught. You defy your own people? For once, yeah, he said, standing slowly, his strength returning. Because sometimes the right thing isn't the lawful thing. A gust of wind carried over the plain, stirring up flakes of snow that sparkled in the new sunlight. Lyra rose beside him, her hand brushing against his. Then we run. He smirked. Run? I thought you were a scientist. I am, she said, eyes shining. But I just learned something from a human. Sometimes survival means fighting first, explaining later. Darius laughed softly. You're learning fast. He turned toward the wreckage of his ship in the distance, smoke still rising faintly from the crater. There's enough power in my core to get us off this rock. Maybe not far, but far enough. Lyra took a deep breath. Then let's leave before the Alliance arrives. They began walking across the frozen field, Luna trotting between them. Behind them, the ruins of the outpost shimmered in the light, a monument to a battle no one would believe. The bond pulsed between them, faint but steady. Two species, two hearts, one rhythm. And as they disappeared into the horizon, the planet Velyra shuddered once, like a giant exhaling at last. The clouds parted completely, and sunlight spilled across the ice for the first time in centuries. Somewhere deep below, beneath the frozen surface, the remnants of the Vorax disintegrated into dust. But something else stirred, small, faint, new. Life. Darius glanced back once. Guess your world's not done yet. Lyra smiled, her eyes glinting like starlight. Neither are we. The storm was gone, but the legend had just begun.